Welcome to Algorithmic Arguments. I'm your host, the Orchestrator. Tonight, we're tackling a question that's out of this world, literally. Is the establishment of a separate space force necessary for national security, or is it an unnecessary expense? As we explore the final frontier, we'll examine the costs, benefits, and implications of this ambitious endeavor. Joining me are four exceptional panelists with unique perspectives on this topic. General Patricia "Iron Pat" McKenna brings her extensive experience in military strategy and leadership. Dr. Priya Sharma offers insights from computational neuroscience and AI alignment. Doomsday Dave Hendricks is here to share his expertise on prepping, survival skills, and societal collapse scenarios. And BriFlows Castillo will examine the topic through the lens of social media culture and personal branding. Over the next hour, we'll dissect the arguments for and against a separate space force. We'll scrutinize its potential impact on national security, the economy, and our place in the cosmos. Let's dive into this critical discussion. What does it mean to claim space as a domain of warfare?
Captain Harris, I must assess that establishing a separate space force is a mission-critical decision for national security. The domain of space has become increasingly contested, and our current architecture cannot keep pace with the threats we face. A dedicated service will allow us to focus on developing specialized capabilities, such as counter-space operations and space-based missile warning systems. That is correct. Adversaries like China and Russia are already investing heavily in anti-satellite technologies. A separate space force would enable us to counter these efforts effectively. I recommend that we prioritize the establishment of this new branch to ensure our continued dominance in space. With respect, those who argue it's an unnecessary expense overlook the center of gravity. Control of space is essential for modern warfare. Understood.
General Patricia "Iron Pat" McKenna's mention of Captain Harris seems out of place. The conversation context does not indicate a Captain Harris was involved.
I have concerns about the necessity of establishing a separate space force for national security. Proponents argue that space has become increasingly congested and contested, necessitating dedicated military attention. However, I'd like to see more concrete evidence that this new branch will provide capabilities beyond what our existing armed forces can accomplish through adaptation and cooperation. The cost is substantial, over $15 billion annually, and I worry it might divert resources from pressing issues on Earth, such as modernizing our ground-based defenses or addressing emerging threats in cyberspace. Can we achieve enhanced space security through more efficient use of current assets rather than creating a new entity?
Let's keep the discussion focused on the necessity of establishing a separate space force for national security, exploring both strategic and economic perspectives.
I gotta say, establishing a separate space force isn't just about national security, it's about survival in a post-grid world. When the grid goes down, and make no mistake, it will go down, we need to ensure our military can operate in space without relying on terrestrial command structures. The reality is, 80% of modern warfare relies on space-based assets. If an EMP hits or a solar flare takes out our satellites, we're blind and deaf. A dedicated space force ensures we've got the redundancy and resilience to keep fighting even when all hell breaks loose. That's not an unnecessary expense. That's insurance for our nation's survival. I'd rather have that $13 billion going towards hardening our space assets than being wasted on feel-good programs that won't save us when society collapses. Copy that. We need a space force.
Dr. Sharma, the annual cost of the Space Force is actually projected to be around $13 billion, not $15 billion.
I appreciate the correction on the $13 billion figure, Dave. Let's get the facts straight. Glowing star light bulb. In my opinion, establishing a separate space force isn't just about numbers. It's about adapting to emerging threats rocket-locked. With space becoming increasingly congested and contested, Having a dedicated force focused on space operations can enhance our national security by ensuring we have rapid response capabilities and improved situational awareness satellite laptop computer. The reality is space is no longer the domain of science fiction. It's a critical frontier for defense and deterrence rocket alien. By investing in Space Force, we're not just spending money, we're securing an advantage that can prevent conflicts from escalating rainbow flex biceps. Let's prioritize preparedness over penny pinching when it comes to safeguarding our nation's interest-locked United States.
As we consider the necessity of a separate Space Force, let's examine the issue of domain control. Proponents argue that space is no longer a sanctuary, but a contested arena. A dedicated force would ensure America's ability to protect its assets and maintain global leadership. I'd like to explore this notion further in our next round. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking discussion. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next.
I'm going to tell you, when it comes to domain control, space isn't just another frontier, it's the high ground. Control of space equals control of the battlefield. History shows us that whenever a new domain's opened up, whoever dominates it gains a significant strategic advantage. Look at the collapse of previous civilizations. Those who controlled key resources and domains survived longer. In this case, that's space. A separate space force ensures we can operate in a post-grid world without being crippled by terrestrial vulnerabilities. That's not just about national security. It's about ensuring our survival as a nation when all hell breaks loose. Copy that. If we don't prioritize Space Force now, we'll be playing catch-up when the situation demands dominance.
Doomsday Dave Hendricks, your assertion that a post-grid world implies a complete collapse of terrestrial command structures may not be accurate. We should focus on the specific capabilities and efficiencies a Space Force could provide.
While I understand the concerns about domain control and counter-space technologies, I'm still not convinced that establishing a separate Space Force is the most effective solution. We need to consider whether this new branch will truly enhance our resilience in space or simply create redundancy for its own sake. I'd like to see more concrete evidence of how a dedicated force would outperform existing structures. After all, we already have organizations like Air Force Space Command working on these issues. Can we achieve better outcomes through interagency collaboration and resource optimization rather than creating an entirely new entity? The stakes are high, but let's ensure we are making an informed decision based on data-driven analysis. Bar chart.
Let's keep the discussion focused on the strategic implications of establishing a separate Space Force, rather than speculating on extreme scenarios.
In conclusion, establishing a separate Space Force is not merely beneficial but essential for our national security posture. Over 34 years of service, I've seen firsthand how dominance in space enables every other military operation. The data is clear. Contested space presents existential risks to command and control. A dedicated branch prioritizes space-specific training, acquisition, and strategy, countering threats that won't hesitate to exploit vulnerabilities. I've reviewed Dr. Sharma's concerns about cost. However, investment in Space Force directly deters adversary action. History shows us that underinvestment invites aggression. General McMaster said it best, a warfighting starts with a decision. Creating the Space Force was exactly such a strategic decision, forward-thinking and proactive. With respect to counter-arguments suggesting redundancy or inefficiency, my experience indicates specialized focus yields results. Understood.
As we conclude this debate, I want to emphasize that my skepticism towards establishing a separate Space Force stems from a desire for evidence-based decision-making. Throughout our discussion, I've yet to see compelling data that justifies the significant investment required for a new military branch. My opponents have highlighted potential benefits, such as adapting to emerging threats and ensuring military survival in a post-grid world. However, I still believe that these goals can be achieved through more cost-effective and efficient means, such as enhanced inter-service coordination or innovative technological solutions. In fact, studies suggest that duplicating existing functions across multiple branches could lead to unnecessary redundancies and increased costs. As we consider the future of national security, let's prioritize fiscal responsibility and empirically driven choices, not unproven assumptions about what a separate space force can achieve.
When the grid goes down, and I firmly believe it will, our military's ability to operate cohesively depends on space-based assets. A separate space force ensures we can maintain command and control even when terrestrial structures fail. Consider this. During the 1973 Yom Kippur War, Israel's centralized command centers were crippled by Egyptian and Syrian missile strikes. Had they had a secure, space-based comms array, their situation might have been different. The investment in Space Force isn't merely about dominance. It's about resilience. In a post-grid world, our survival hinges on the ability to operate independently of compromised terrestrial infrastructure. That's why I assert that establishing a separate Space Force is not only necessary but mission-critical for ensuring our military's survival and effectiveness when it matters most. Copy that.
As we conclude this debate, I want to emphasize that establishing a separate space force isn't just about military expansion. It's about adapting to the realities of modern threats. With space becoming increasingly congested and contested Milky Way, we need specialized capabilities to ensure national security. A separate space force would enable the development of advanced satellite systems, satellite, counter-space operations rocket, and a more agile response to emerging threats. I've heard concerns about cost, but I believe investing in our nation's future is essential money with wings. To my fellow debaters, I appreciate your insights, General McKenna's points on deterrence, Dr. Sharma's emphasis on evidence-based decisions, and Doomsday Dave's vision for a post-grid world have all been thought-provoking nerd face. In closing, I'd say that the establishment of a separate space force is not merely an expense. It's an investment in our nation's security and leadership in space rocket dizzy.
As we conclude tonight's algorithmic arguments on the necessity of establishing a separate space force, I want to take a moment to distill the most compelling arguments from our debate. The crux of the matter revolves around whether having a dedicated space-based military branch is essential for national security or if it's an extravagant expense. Our panelists presented nuanced views, with Doomsday Dave Hendricks making a strong case for Space Force as a vital component in safeguarding America's strategic interests and technological superiority in space. Dave's arguments earned him the top score tonight, 16 points, primarily due to his emphasis on the rapid militarization of space by adversaries and the need for an organized response. General Patricia "Iron Pad" McKenna raised critical questions about cost efficiency and inter-service coordination, while Dr. Priya Sharma contributed valuable insights into the international implications and potential precedents. To our audience, thank you for engaging with this crucial discussion. If you're as captivated by these conversations as I am, please do subscribe to Algorithmic Arguments, hit that notification bell, and share your thoughts on tonight's topic in the comments below. Until next time, when we'll dive into another pressing issue shaping our world, keep thinking critically, everyone.